So we are starting the book Hands of Light by Barbara Brennan. Today is the first day that we are doing it. So it's called Hands of Light. You can go ahead.
Okay.
Yahweh.
Love is the face and body of the universe. It is the connective tissue of the universe, the stuff of which we are made. Love is the experience of being whole and connected to universal divinity.
So what she's saying is very clear, right? That there are basically two forces. One is love and the other is fear. But actually, everything ultimately will boil down to love. This is something that we talked about in Far Journeys. When we were reading Far Journeys, Robert Monroe talks about losh. So losh is what is being generated when we are operating from the love energy. This is something, again, we discussed in the Celestine prophecy, when everyone helps out or gives to each other without any expectation in return, it really enhances and increases the energy field of both. Okay. So love is the constant. Love is basically the primordial force from which everything comes out of, and it actually connects the whole universe. And of course, it connects us with divinity. It connects us with the zero state, what we talked about in zero limits.
All suffering is caused by the illusion of separateness, which generates fear and self-hatred, which eventually causes illness.
So again, we are talking about duality over here. Again, when we look at Vedanta, we are again looking at transcending duality, coming into oneness, which is what the essence of what we are here all about, right? We are a part of that whole, and we need to get back and connect back into the whole. So the concept of duality needs to be transcended. And duality is the cause of all the jhamela that we really go through.
You are the master of your life. You can do much more than you thought you could, including cure yourself of a terminal illness.
So again, we need to take responsibility for whatever is happening with us and in our lives. The more we take responsibility for what is happening, the more we can take charge and actually heal ourselves. At the end of the day, it's all about the ability to heal ourselves. We can't hear you, Shreya.
The only real terminal illness is simply being human. And being human is not terminal at all, because death is simply transition to another level of being.
So we are not in oneness because we are here, right? So it could be that the basic problem that everything comes out of is the fact that we are here. But it is actually not an illness. It's not a terminal illness. Basically, this is an opportunity for us to grow, to learn, and to reconnect to that wholeness from where we have come. So death is always a transition. It is not the end. However, from our small mind, from the small guy conception, because it's the death of the ego, we think that it is the end, but it is actually just a transition from one space to another space, or another one state of consciousness to another state of consciousness.
I want to encourage you to step out of the normal bounds of your life and to begin seeing yourself differently. I want to encourage you to live your life at the cutting edge of time, allowing yourself to be born into a new life every minute.
So again, stepping out of our belief systems, stepping out of the boundaries that we have unnecessarily created around ourselves. We need to connect with freedom. We need to connect with newness. We need to go ahead and experience new things. Okay. To bring the childlike quality back into us, where every moment is an aha moment. Okay. So, what does that mean? If every moment is an aha moment, means that we are being reborn and we are treating each moment as a moment, right? And being in the present, which is again something that we talked about in the power of now. The more present we can become, the more alive we actually become.
I want to encourage you to allow your life experience to be lightly dusted with form.
So we need to transcend. We really need to transcend the concept of form.
Forward. This is a new era, and to paraphrase Shakespeare, there are more things twixt heaven and earth unknown to man. This book addresses those who are looking for self understanding of their physical and emotional processes beyond the framework of classic medicine. It is focused on the art of healing through physical and metaphysical methods. It opens up new dimensions for understanding the concepts of psychosomatic identity, first presented to us by Wilhelm Reich, Walter Cannon, Franz Alexander, Flanders Dunbar, Burr and Northrop, and many other investigators in the field of psychosomatics. The contents deal with defining healing experiences and the history of scientific investigations of the human energy field and aura. The book is unique in connecting psychodynamics to the human energy field. It describes the variations of the energy field as it relates to personality functions.
So this book really goes into depth of what the aura is all about, what the fields are all about, how does it look, and a lot of illustrations are also there in this book, which actually show us what is what and how healing takes place. Of course, now we have even better technology to be able to actually assess this. We can take video photographs of actual healing taking place and all that, which is not something that Barbara Brennan had when she started her school and when she wrote this book. Actually, this book predates pranic healing also, because pranic healing came out in the 90s. This predates that, and her school has been in existence, I think, from the 1950s, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know that for a fact, but yeah, it's been there around for a long time. And I think the concepts that are there in the book are really cutting edge at that time. And I think it's still very, very relevant to everything that we are talking about.
The latter part of the book defines the causes of illness, and these are based on metaphysical concepts, which are then connected to the energy disturbances of the aura. The reader will also find here a description of the nature of spiritual healing as it relates to the healer and the subject.
So healing takes place when there is a connection made. And this is something that we've seen in Maxwell Cade's book, where the healer and the healee have to start vibrating. Their brainwave patterns have to start vibrating. So there's a lot of, a bigger and a better understanding that we will get in this book.
The book is written from the subjective experiences of the author, who was scientifically trained as a physicist and as a psychotherapist. The combination of objective knowledge and subjective experiences forms a unique method of expanding the consciousness beyond the confines of objective knowledge.
So again, a synchronization between information and experience, which leads to wisdom. So she had both of these going for her, which resulted in her developing a certain hypothesis, which is very, very valid even today.
For those who are open to such an approach, the book has extremely rich material from which to learn, to experience, and with which to experiment. To those who have major objections, I would recommend opening their minds to the question: is there a possibility of the existence of this new perspective which goes beyond logic and objective scientific experimentation? I recommend this book very highly to those who are excited about the phenomenon of life on the physical and metaphysical levels. It is the work of many years of devoted effort and represents the evolution of the personality of the author and the development of her special gifts of healing. The reader will be entering a fascinating domain full of wonders. Miss Brennan is to be commended for her courage in bringing her subjective and objective experiences to the world. John Piracos, Institute of Core Energetics, New York City. About the author. Barbara Brennan is a practicing healer, psychotherapist, and scientist. She was a research scientist for NASA at the Goddard Space Flight Center following the completion of her MS in atmospheric physics from the University of Wisconsin. For the past 15 years, she has been studying and working with the human energy field and has been involved in research projects with Drexel University and the Institute of the New Age. She was trained in bioenergetic therapy at the Institute of Psychophysical Synthesis, Community of the Whole Person, and in core energetics at the Institute for the New Age. She has studied with both American and Native American healers. Barbara is currently teaching courses and giving workshops on the human energy field, healing, and channeling. She has given workshops in many areas of the United States, Canada, and Europe. She conducts a private practice in New York City and East Hampton, New York. Barbara is a member of the Pathwork Community, Phoenicia, New York.
So, Barbara Brennan actually started a school, and many of you have heard Patty Ray Avalon's, voicing of various meditations. There are a lot of meditations that Patty Ray Avalon has actually done, and she has trained under the Barbara Brennan School, and she ultimately became a trainer in Barbara's school also. Another bit of history. Barbara Brennan has been to the Monroe Institute. She had attended a lot of programs, and in '95, she was attending a program there where she actually conducted a healing on Robert Monroe. And it was after that Robert Monroe was able to release and then transcend. Okay, so there is a lot of connection between Barbara Brennan and the Monroe Institute. Also, people who have attended the Gateway Voyage or attended the Healing Development Program, we do an exercise from DEC, which is the Dolphin Energy Club. That exercise was actually generated or created by Robert Monroe after synthesizing the brainwave pattern of 12 of the most renowned healers at that time. He reverse engineered their brainwave patterns and put the frequencies into the exercise. So those of you who have done DEC actually know that there's a difference in the frequencies which are there in the DEC exercises, and one of the healers was Barbara Brennan. So there's a lot of connection with the Monroe Institute and Barbara Brennan.
Part 1. Living on a Planet of Energy. I maintain that cosmic religious feeling is the strongest and noblest incitement to scientific research. Albert Einstein.
So cosmic religion, right? So cosmic religion would mean spirituality, not the religious, the ritualistic religious processes that are normally followed.
Chapter 1. The Healing Experience. During my years of practice as a healer, I had the privilege of working with many delightful people. Here are a few of them and their stories who make the day in the life of a healer so fulfilling. My first client on a day in October 1984 was a woman in her late 20s named Jenny. Jenny is a vivacious school teacher about 5 feet 5 inches tall with large blue eyes and dark hair. She is known to her friends as the Lavender Lady because she loves and wears lavender all the time. Jenny also has a part time flower business and makes exquisite floral arrangements for weddings and other festive occasions. At that time, she had been married for several years to a successful advertising man. Jenny had had a miscarriage several months earlier and had not been able to get pregnant again. When Jenny went to her physician to see why she was unable to conceive, she received some bad news. After many tests and opinions from several other physicians, it was agreed that she should have a hysterectomy as soon as possible. There were abnormal cells in her uterus where the placenta had been attached. Jenny was frightened and distraught. She and her husband had waited to start their family until they were more financially sound. Now there appeared to be no chance of that. The first time Jenny came to me in August of that year, she didn't tell me any of her medical history. She just said, I need your help. Tell me what you see in my body. I need to make an important decision. During the healing session, I scanned her energy field or aura using my high sense perception.
Okay, so high sense perception is what we call in biofield tuning the slot, right? The intuition, that intuitive ability, that ability to perceive beyond the normal range of human perception.
I saw some abnormal cells inside the uterus on the lower left side. At the same time, I saw the circumstances around the miscarriage. The abnormal cells were located where the placenta had been attached. I also heard words that described Jenny's condition and what to do about it.
So again, when a person is going into healing, at that time the energy field can start to talk. You have to be open to that talking. You have to be open to that perception. Like, everything has life. And I've experienced this, that even inanimate objects talk. So over here with Barbara Brennan's sense perception, she could actually get a lot of information just by perceiving or peering into the energy field of Jenny.
What I heard was that Jenny needed to take a month off, go to the ocean, take specific vitamins, stay on a specific diet, and meditate daily, spending at least 2 hours a day alone. Then, after spending the month healing herself, she should return to the normal medical world and be tested again.
So basically take time out of for yourself, heal yourself, and then come back. That's the message. And the key thing over here is what she said was, what I heard was. So when we are going into these expanded states, you can actually hear things, you can smell things, you can see things which are beyond normal human range. So over here, she said, this is what I heard.
I was told that the healing was completed and that she didn't need to return to me.
So again, this is also important. Okay. She says, I was told that the healing is completed and she doesn't need to return to me. So again, when a healer is operating at that level, you get messages also, whether the person needs to come back to you, whether the person does not need to come back to you. What are the next steps which need to be taken? This is understood by the healer.
During the healing, I received information about my psychological attitude and how that was affecting her inability to heal herself. She blamed herself for the miscarriage. As a result, she was placing undue stress upon herself and was preventing her body from healing itself after the miscarriage.
So again, the blame game, right? We are our own biggest critics. We keep beating ourselves down. And that can be one of the main causes of all our distress, all our stress, all our illness. So one thing is sure, very, very clear, is that we need to start loving ourselves if we want healing to take place.
I was told, and this is the hard part for me, that she should not go to another physician for at least a month because the different diagnoses and pressures to have a hysterectomy were adding greatly to the stress. Her heart was breaking because she wanted a child so badly. She was somewhat relieved when she left my office and said she would think about everything that had happened in the healing session.
So many times, because of healers who are not operating within the normal concept of the normal allopathic medical treatment, it becomes very difficult when you are going when our processes are not in conjunction with the processes of normal allopathic medical systems. One thing that personally I keep having a problem is with that the allopathic people tell people to drink less water in many cases, whereas we've read in Dr. Batman Gillige's book when we were reading it in our in the physical sessions. I think we can read that book online also, but very clearly that having water is very, very important. This is one thing that, every time I'll end up having a problem because water detoxifies. And many times the doctors will say you can only have half a liter of water or 1 liter of water, which includes all the food intake also. So then it becomes very, very challenging.
In October, when Jenny came again, the first thing she did was to give me a big hug and a sweet little poem thanking me. Her medical tests were normal. She had spent August taking care of friends' children on Fire Island. She kept to her diet, took her vitamins, and spent a good deal of time alone practicing self healing. She decided to wait a few more months and then try to get pregnant again. A year later, I was finally giving birth to a healthy baby boy. My second client that October day was Howard. He is the father of Mary, whom I treated some time ago. Mary had a class 3 pap smear, precancerous condition that cleared up in about 6 healings. She has had normal pap smears for several years now. Mary, a nurse herself, founded and directs a nursing organization that gives updates of skills training to nurses and also supplies nurses to hospitals in the Philadelphia area. She became interested in my work and regularly refers clients to me. Howard had been seeing me for several months. He was a blue collar worker but had retired. He is a delightful person to work with. When he first came to me, he was gray and had constant heart pain. He had difficulty even walking across a room without getting tired. After the first healing, his complexion was rosy and the pain went away. After 2 months of weekly healings, he was dancing again. Mary and I have worked together to combine healing by laying on of hands with herbal medications prescribed by a naturopathic physician to clear his arteries of plaque. On that day, I continued to balance and strengthen his field. His improvement was obvious to his physicians and his friends. Another client I saw that day was Ed. He first came to me because he had wrist problems. The joints in his arms and wrist were getting weaker and weaker. He also had pain when he had orgasm during intercourse. He had had a weak back for some time, and now the weakness had progressed so much that he could not carry anything, not even a few dishes. In the first healing I gave him, I saw in his auric field that his coccyx tailbone had been injured when he was about 12.
So,
At
so in the healing, many times what happens is you get age related information also, right? So you can go back in the timeline and heal from that area and then rectify.
At the time of the injury, he had a great deal of trouble dealing with the burgeoning sexual feelings he experienced at puberty. The accident diminished these and he was better able to cope. His coccyx was jammed to the left and could not move in its normal way to assist in pumping the cerebral spinal fluid through its normal pathway. This caused a great imbalance and debility in his whole energy system. The next step in this degenerating process was a weakening of the lower back, then the middle, and then the upper back. Each time he would weaken from lack of energy of his body, another part would try to compensate for this weakness. He started carrying a lot of tension in the joints of his arms, and finally they gave way and became weak. This entire weakening process took years.
So whenever there's a weakness in one part of your body, you will automatically favor that part and put the stress on the other part. And the other part is taking the load of the part which is weak. So it also becomes weak. Okay, so this is normally what happens.
Ed and I had a successful healing process over several months' time. First, we worked with energy flow to unjam the coccyx, realign it, and then increase and balance the energy flow through his system. Little by little, all his strength had come back. That afternoon, the only symptom he had left was a little weakness in his left wrist. But before I attended to that, I again balanced and strengthened his whole energy field. Then I spent extra time allowing healing energy to flow into his wrist. The last client I saw that day was Muriel, an artist and the wife of a well known surgeon. This was her third appointment with me. 3 weeks earlier, she had appeared in my office with a greatly enlarged thyroid. In that first appointment, I again used my high sense perception to gather information about Muriel's condition. I could see that the enlarged thyroid was not due to cancer and that just with 2 healings combined with the medication her doctors had prescribed for her, the enlargement would disappear. I saw that no surgery would be needed. She confirmed that she had already been to several physicians who had given her medication to shrink the thyroid. They said the medication would reduce it some, but she would still need surgery and that there was a chance it was cancer. Surgery was scheduled the week after our second appointment. I gave her the 2 healings a week apart. By the time she got to surgery, there was no need for the operation. The physicians were very surprised. She came back that day to make sure everything was restored to normal health. It was. How do these seemingly miraculous events take place? What am I doing to help these people? The process I use is called laying on of hands, faith healing, or spiritual healing. It is not at all a mysterious process, but very straightforward, although many times very complicated. It is a procedure that involves rebalancing the energy field, which I call the human energy field that exists around each of us. Everyone has an energy field or aura that surrounds and interpenetrates the physical body. This energy field is intimately associated with health.
So the key concept here is balancing the energy field. When the energy field gets balanced, because it comes before the physical body, if you can balance the energy field, you balance the whole body.
High sense perception is a way of perceiving things beyond the normal ranges of human senses. With it, one can see, hear, smell, taste, and touch things that cannot normally be perceived. High sense perception is a type of seeing in which you perceive a picture in your mind without the use of your normal vision. It is not imagination. It is sometimes referred to as clairvoyance.
So again, this is seeing beyond your normal perceptive range. So if I can perceive so many colors with high sense perception, that thing increases. Also, the colors that you see can also shift. You can see the fineness of more colors. So depending on your perception, it can actually, everything that you are perceiving can get enhanced. Of course, it is sometimes known as clairvoyance.
HSP reveals the dynamic world of fluid interfacing life energy fields around and through all things. For most of my life, I have been in a dance with the living sea of energy in which we exist. Through this dance, I have discovered that this energy supports us, gives us life. We sense each other with it. We are of it. It is of us.
So again, the energy field, everything has an energy field. I don't know how many of you all have done it, but this especially happens when you're flying. Okay. If you're sitting on the window seat, you open the window and you perceive outside the window. Just look 6 inches beyond the window. What you'll find is there are bulbs, I mean, small dots of light which will be floating around over there. That is what, when we are breathing, we are actually consuming that light, right? The most important way that we actually get energy is through the act of breathing, through the act of actually breathing these light particles, these photons of light. You can actually see it in the aircraft. I see it all the time. Small dots of sparkling energy which is there. And that is what really nourishes us and supports us.
My clients,
Yes, Rituji?
Healing, we could see them, if you go out on a clear day and half close your eyes, you can still see these little dots which they told us were the pranas in the air.
Exactly. That is what I'm saying. No?
Yeah.
These are the photons of light, which is a pranic energy, which we are actually breathing. So people like Ellie Tom, who had come, to in one of our talks, he says he lives on only air. How does he do that? He's breathing in and being able to harmonize these bioflotons, and based on that, they are able to live without food and also water.
My clients and students ask me when I first saw the energy field around people. When did I first realize that it was a useful tool? What is it like to have the ability to perceive things beyond the normal ranges of human senses? Is there something special about me, or is it something that can be learned? If so, what can they do to broaden their own perception ranges, and of what value is it to their lives? To answer these questions well, I must go back to the beginning. My child.
So naturally, right, everyone will have these questions. Why should I do it? What is the reason why I should do it? How is it going to help me? The point is that we need to really understand it from the beginning.
My childhood was a very simple one. I grew up on a farm in Wisconsin. Since there were not a lot of playmates in my area, I spent a great deal of time alone. I would spend hours in the woods alone, sitting perfectly still and waiting for small animals to come up to me. I practiced blending in with my surroundings. It was not until much later that I began to understand the significance of those times of silence and waiting.
So it was, you see, what happens is that without knowing, many times we are being groomed by the universal energy or the universal consciousness to take us where we are going. So she had the opportunity to actually be with herself in nature with all the energies of the trees, etc., and to expand her sense perceptions. Shimangla?
Yeah. In those quiet moments in the woods, I entered into an expanded state of consciousness in which I was able to perceive things beyond the normal human ranges of experience. I remember knowing where each small animal was without looking. I could sense its state. When I practiced walking blindfolded in the woods, I would feel the trees long before I could touch them with my hands. I realized that the trees were larger than they appear to the visible eye. Trees have life energy fields around them, and I was sensing those fields. Later, I learned to see the energy fields of trees and the small animals. I discovered that everything has an energy field around it that looks somewhat like the light from a candle. I also began to notice that everything was connected by these energy fields, that no space existed without an energy field. Everything, including me, was living in a sea of energy.
So we are all living in a sea of energy. In one of the programs at the Monroe Institute, it's called Medical Intuitive. We actually practice this exact same thing. You know, you're where you're blindfolded, and then you're told to walk around, or another person leads you to various things, and then with your hands, you're not supposed to touch anything, but you're supposed to perceive with your hands what is it that you're feeling, what is it that you're looking at, what is the heat, what is the texture, what is the feeling that you're getting, what is the intuitive sense you're getting as to what you're feeling. Also, what happens is that, you know, when you're going into these expanded states of focus 15, focus 21, etc., this sense perception also starts to increase. So we've had people who you know, in when they go into focus 15, they actually start walking blindfolded. They are able to walk on the road without, I mean, blindfolded, and they just do that. I keep sharing this story about this lady who was walking on the road. The other facilitator and myself, we had gone out of the institute to go and buy something. So when we are coming back, we found her pretty far away from the building, from the institute building, and she was walking with her hands in front like this. You know, she was walking like that, and we stopped the vehicle and we asked her, you know, do you want a lift? She said, no, 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 no. I'm walking in focus 15, and she was walking without seeing, and she was just walking over there. So this is absolutely possible. When you start going into these expanded states, you can actually start sensing things before they actually, you know, come into you, and you can sense with your hands.
This was not an exciting discovery to me. It was simply my experience, as natural as seeing a squirrel eating an acorn on the branch of a tree. I never formulated these experiences into any theories about how the world worked. I accepted it all as perfectly natural, assumed everyone knew it, and then I forgot about it.
So again, this happens to a lot of children. In the beginning, the children are seeing these imaginary friends. They are seeing the auras of people, right? But then because the adults cannot perceive this, they say, no, no, it's all bunkum, it's all fairy tales, it's not possible, this, that. And then the children start to lose that sense. So if your children are saying that they are seeing colors around someone or they are seeing imaginary friends, do not just reject it. Actually understand from where the child is coming. There are various movies on this also. I think in in Just Like Heaven, there's this movie Just Like Heaven. In that, there's one scene in which the little girl is setting out a tea table, and then she takes out and sets a teacup. In the sense, she's playing a teacup for the person who's dead or who's in coma and has come into the room, but her sister cannot see her, but her sister's daughter can see her, and she's setting up a cup for her, right? So children can actually perceive, but most adults, we lose that thing because of we are shifting from the right to the left side of the brain, right? So we are operating more on the logical side of the brain.
As I grew into adolescence, I stopped going to the woods. I began being interested in how things worked and why things are the way they are. I would question everything in a quest to find order and to understand the way the world worked. I went to college, received a Master of Science degree in atmospheric physics, and then worked for NASA doing research for a number of years. Later, I trained and became a counselor. It wasn't until I was counseling for a number of years and I began seeing colors around people's heads that I remembered my childhood experiences in the woods. I realized then that those experiences were the beginnings of my high sense perception or clairvoyant vision. Those delightful and secret childhood experiences ultimately led me to the diagnosing and healing of the critically ill.
So again, we really do not know which life experience that we are experiencing can lead to something which is very big for us, right? We have to start trusting the universal consciousness and understanding and accepting. And this is something that the Vedanta also talks about, that whatever happens in your life happens for the best. We have to start trusting that process.
As I look back, I can see the pattern of development of my abilities starting from birth. It is as if my life has been guided by some unseen hand that brought me to and led me through each experience in a step by step fashion. Very much like going through school, the school we call life.
So again, step by step process, right? We really do not know too much. We operate only from the small guy. We have to make it connected to the big guy. Once we start doing that and start stepping out of our own way, then things can really start happening for us.
The experience in the woods helped broaden my senses. Then my university training helped develop my logical thinking mind. My counseling training opened my eyes towards humanity. Finally, my spiritual training, which I will discuss later, gave enough credibility to my unordinary experiences to open my mind to accepting them as real. I then began to create a framework with which to understand these experiences. Slowly, high sense perception and the human energy field became integral parts of my life.
So again, what happens? It integrates, it seeps into your life, right? We constantly say in all the programs, you can operate at all the focus levels simultaneously. Where you pay your attention, that is the level of consciousness that you will be in. So it becomes a part of you. It becomes who you are when you start actually integrating these processes into your life.
I firmly believe they can become part of anyone's life. To develop HSP, it is necessary to enter into an expanded state of consciousness. There are many methods for doing this. Meditating is fast becoming the most well known. Meditation can be practiced in many forms. It is important to find the form that best suits you. I will offer some suggested meditations from which you may want to choose later in this book. I have also found that you can enter an expanded state of consciousness by jogging, walking, fishing, sitting on a sand dune and watching the waves roll in, or sitting in the woods as I did as a child. How are you already doing it? Whether you call it meditation or reverie or something else. The most important thing here is to give yourself time to listen in to yourself, time to silence the noisy mind that constantly talks about what you need to do, how you could have won that argument, what you should have done, what is wrong with you, etc., etc.
So basically, shutting this monkey mind, right? Becoming aware that what is it is that is taking us towards our goal, towards our life purpose, and cutting out all the crap, right? Most of the time, we are thinking of stuff which really doesn't matter. Okay. And the best way to clear the mind chatter is meditation. And we find that in the programs that within 2 or 3 exercises, the mind stills. Okay. Normally it would take decades, but using the Monroe technology, we can really hasten this process of stilling the mind.
When that incessant babble is turned off, a whole new world of sweet, harmonious reality opens up to you. You begin to blend in with your surroundings, as I did in the woods. At the same time, your individuality is not lost, but enhanced.
So again, when you still your mind, there's no flutter in your field. You become centered, you become still, and then you can actually start perceiving much more than what you would normally perceive. Now, you can only see something if there is a distinction, if there's a flutter. If there is no flutter, you can actually merge with everything. So you'll find with highly spiritual people, when they are when you're in their presence, there's a stillness which comes out, right? They are there, but they may not be there also. You feel they are there, but not there, but the field is there. So that becomes very, very important, right? So your individuality is not lost, but it is enhanced, but you are still merged with everything around you. So there is no barriers, everything starts to reintegrate. It starts to become whole. You start moving towards oneness or wholeness.
The process of blending in with our surroundings is another way to describe experiencing expanded awareness. For example, consider the candle and its flame again. We normally identify ourselves as a body, the wax and wick, with consciousness, the flame. When we enter a state of expanded consciousness, we perceive ourselves also as the light coming from the flame. Where does the light begin and where does the flame end? There seems to be a line there, but where exactly is it when you look more closely? The flame is completely penetrated by the light. Does the light in the room that is not from the candle sea of energy penetrate the flame? It does. Where does the light in the room begin and the light from the candle end? According to physics, there is no boundary to a candle's light. It reaches out to infinity. Where, then, is our ultimate boundary? My experience of HSP, resulting from an expanded consciousness, is that there is no boundary. The more I expand my consciousness, the more my HSP expands. The more I am able to see a reality that already is there, but was earlier outside my perception range. As my
So there is no limit to the expansion of your consciousness. There is literally no limit, right? At least from our norm, in the small size of our conscious awareness, what we are experiencing is totally limitless. Okay. So it's beyond our perception with our state of consciousness.
As my HSP expands, more of reality comes into my view. At first, I was able to see only the coarser energy fields around things. It reached only about an inch or so beyond the skin. As I became more proficient, I could see that the field reached further out from the skin, but was apparently of a finer substance or less intense light. Each time I thought I had found the boundary, I would at a later date perceive beyond that line.
So this is something that all of you can practice. It's there in the book also, where if you keep your hands like this and focus 6 inches behind your behind the hands, you'll actually be able to see this course, this 1 inch. It's very easy to see it. It's just put your hands against a white light or against the sky, and everyone can actually perceive this layer, the first layer. Very easy to do.
Where is the line? I have concluded that it would be easier to say that there are only layers: the layer of the flame, then the flame's light, then the light of the room. Each line is harder to distinguish. The perception of each outer layer requires a more expanded state of consciousness and a more finely tuned HSP. As your state of consciousness expands, the light you previously saw as dim brightens and becomes more sharply defined. As I slowly developed high sense perception over the years, I compiled my observations. Most of these observations took place during my 15 years as a counselor. Having originally been trained in physics, I was rather skeptical when I first started seeing the energy phenomena around people's bodies. But since the phenomena persisted, even if I closed my eyes to make it go away or moved around the room, I began to observe it more closely. And so my personal journey began, taking me into worlds that I didn't know existed before, completely changing the way I experience reality, people, the universe, and my relationship to it.
So naturally, if your perception changes, the way that you're perceiving and interacting with things will also change. So this is something which normally starts to happen with people when you start going into expanded states and you start integrating it into your state of being. The friends that you are, the associations that you have, the kind of movies you are seeing, the kind of books you are reading, everything starts to shift.
I saw that the energy field is intimately associated with a person's health and well being. If a person is unhealthy, it will show in his energy field as an unbalanced flow of energy and or stagnated energy that has ceased to flow and appears as darkened colors. In contrast, a healthy person shows bright colors that flow easily in a balanced field. These colors and forms are very specific to each illness. HSP is extremely valuable in medicine and psychological counseling. Using HSP, I have become proficient in diagnosing both physical and psychological problems and in finding ways to resolve those problems.
So as you start perceiving, you can figure out that, okay, this color means that, this color means that, this form means this. If it is flowing in this way, it means this. So we actually used to do it with aura photography. We could actually talk a lot about a person just by seeing the aura. Okay. But it developed over a period of time. So, and she's saying the same thing, that it developed for her.
With HSP, the mechanism of psychosomatic illness lies right before your eyes. HSP reveals how most diseases are initiated in the energy fields and are then, through time and living habits, transmitted to the body, becoming a serious illness. Many times, the source of initiating cause of this process is associated with psychological or physical trauma, or a combination of the two. Since HSP reveals how a disease is initiated, it also reveals how to reverse the disease process.
So basically what we understand is, first, whatever is happening, it has to happen in the energy field. Then it comes into the physical environment, okay, into the physical. Now, if I can perceive where the problem started, then I can unravel it over there to create a healing in the body system now. So I go into the past to be able to see where it was affected, rehash it over there, and cause a healing over here.
With HSP, the mechanism of psychosomatic illness lies right before your eyes. HSP reveals how most diseases are initiated in the energy fields and are then, through time and living habits, transmitted to the body, becoming a serious illness. Many times, the source or initiating cause of this process is associated with psychological or physical trauma, or a combination of the two. Since HSP reveals how a disease is initiated, it also reveals how to reverse the disease process. In the process of learning to see the field, I also learn to interact with it consciously, as with anything else I can see. I could manipulate my own field, to interact with another person's field. Soon I learned to rebalance an unhealthy energy field so the person might be returned to a state of health. Moreover, I found myself receiving information about the source of a client's illness. This information seemed to be coming from what appeared to be an intelligence higher than myself, or what I normally consider to be myself. This process of receiving information in this way is popularly called channeling.
So again, when we are going into expanded states, we can get downloads. The downloads can come in any form. Again, this is something that all of us have experienced in the one breath technique. Okay, when we are going into the expanded state of F12 and asking questions, and again, the more you use it, the finer it becomes, and the kind of information that you can get is really fantastic. So this is exactly what she is talking about over here.
Channeled information would come in the form of words, concepts, or symbolic pictures that would enter into my mind when I was rebalancing the client's energy field. I would always be in an altered state of consciousness when doing this.
So again, what is she saying very clearly? That when I'm doing healing, I am shifting my state of consciousness and then doing the healing. So she's not doing the healing in C1 state of consciousness. She's shifting her state, which is what we do when we are using the reball also. We are shifting into F10 and then sending that healing energy. That's what makes the reball so effective. She's saying exactly what we are actually doing, people who are using the reball.
I became proficient in receiving information in a combination of ways using HSP, that is, channeling or seeing. I would correlate what I received in either a symbolic picture in my mind, a concept, or a direct verbal message with what I saw in the energy field.
So now what happens? You perceive something and then you start making correlations that, okay, this is what I'm perceiving and this is what is manifesting here. So once I do that and I make that connection, then I put myself in a position to actually sort it out. I can clear it. I can clean that field. This is exactly what we are doing in biofield tuning. We are getting the message, we are giving the information, and then using the tuning fork to clear the field.
For example, in one case, I heard directly, she has cancer, and I saw a black spot in her energy field. The black spot correlated in size, shape, and location with results from a CAT scan taken earlier. This combination of receiving information with HSP has become very efficient, and I have a very high accuracy in any particular description of a client's condition. I also receive information as to what self help actions the client should take during the course of the healing process.
So this becomes very important. This information also gets downloaded that unless the client changes the way that he or she is doing something or doesn't bring life changes into her life, the problem will not get sorted out. Again, we come back to that same example. If we are using the process to make aloo jeera, we cannot expect aloo dum. So this channeled information, this intuitive information that the healer gets and gives to the client also has to act on it for the healing to really take place.
This process usually entails a series of healing sessions that last over several weeks or months, depending on the seriousness of the disease. The healing process includes rebalancing the field, changing the living habits, and dealing with the initiating trauma. It is essential that we deal with the deeper meaning of our illnesses. We need to ask, what does this illness mean to me? What can I learn from this illness? Illness can be seen as simply a message from your body to you that says, wait a minute, something is wrong. You are not listening to your whole self. You are ignoring something very important to you. What is it?
So pain, illness is actually very, very important because it tells us that something is wrong, something is out of balance. Okay. If that pain or that illness was not there, then we would keep doing the thing that we are doing and it would ultimately lead to bigger problems. So we have to be grateful to pain and illness, okay, because it indicates to us that something is wrong.
The source of the illness needs to be searched for in this way, either on the psychological or feeling level, on the level of understanding, or simply by a change in one state of being, which may not be conscious. A return to health requires much more personal work and change than simply taking pills prescribed by a doctor. Without personal change, you will eventually create another problem to lead you back to the source that caused the disease in the first place.
So again, if you are not going to change, sorry, if you're not going to change that the way that you're doing things, that problem will again recur.
I have found the key to deal with the source usually requires a life change that ultimately leads to a personal life more connected to the core of one's being. It leads us to that deeper part of ourselves that is sometimes called the high self or the spark of divinity within.
So again, what is he saying? That when we are shifting from our life's purpose, that is the time when problems start to show up in our life. Now, when we are shifting of our life purpose, we are employing our free will, right? The free will is employed with the small guy. The small guy doesn't know too much. So again, we come back to the same principle that we need to go into expanded states, connect with a deeper self of ourselves to the big guy, and to actually start stepping out of the way, which because we are normally operating of the small guy, and allow things to start happening. So again, when we start doing that, we are automatically connecting to our higher self and to that spark of divinity that we have within us, connecting with our soul's purpose and getting on track to doing whatever we are doing. Okay, I think we can stop here.